That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Anyway, what are we talking about trades this week? Isn't that an interesting question? Well, we are discussing Star Wars Volume 3 Rebel Jail by Jason Aaron with art by Leinil, Mike Mayhew, and Mike Mayhew, with the annual written by Kieran Gillen and artist Angela Unziuta. These names, y'all. So we start off with this annual, which I did an episode on. I talked about it in comic reviews, and I quite liked it. Just really, really brilliant Palpatine writing by Kieran Gillen, and I like that it showed kind of the dirtier side of a rebellion that people don't like to talk about. Like, we like to imagine, because of Hi Neurocle, we like to imagine, because of stuff like Star Wars, this idea of the romantic, the perfect rebels, and often the kinds of people that join a rebellion are more often than not the kinds of people that want to hurt people. Like, you have to be willing to kill, and like whatever your motivations behind doing acts of murder, no matter how noble they might be, it doesn't change the fact you're committing an act of murder. And with a rebellion, you don't have the fallback of it's sanctioned by my state, it's okay. You have entirely, it's based on your ideology. This is a guy who's not only committing horrible acts, but is, because of his position as a spy on Coruscant, is having to commit them horribly, and he knows he doesn't get to be a hero and all this interesting stuff. And then so I talked about that issue, and I thought that was just a complete standalone. Didn't think it was going to be part of anything else. And that surprise probably worked better if I'd been reading this in singles as opposed to in trade. Because when you have an annual included in a trade, and you have a mysterious character show up and he starts talking really vaguely about certain things, you get a real sense of, oh, it's the guy from the first story. So what's going on here is Leia is transporting Dr. Aphra, who was captured during the Vader Down story right at the end of it. That's where this takes place at, right after Vader Down. She's transporting Dr. Aphra to the Rebel prison facility, which is a base that orbits a sun and is incredibly well protected. And then while they're there, right after they put Dr. Aphra away, the ship gets boarded and taken over by some kind of mysterious pirate, basically. And you think that it's a guy who wants to free the captured Imperials. But really, he wants to kill them. He keeps having these conversations. He takes over the prison and starts releasing everybody, and forcing Leia's hand to murder them, basically, is the idea. And he's having these conversations with Leia over the intercom about how they won't spare you. Why are you doing the same? Why are you extending them that courtesy? You're fighting a war. You're going to lose if you act this way. You can't act like you have any kind of moral high ground. You're going to get everyone killed. And Leia is fighting through this gauntlet that he puts her through, trying to hold on to her values. And she has to break them a little bit, she has to get kind of gray with them, and so she teams up with Dr. Aphra to help get out of the situation. There are these intercuts with Han and Luke that are entirely superfluous and only serve to give like a fake out little moment of tension and are not needed literally at all. It's just comedic relief that is not connected to the main story in any way, shape, or form, and the story would not be affected at all if it were to be cut out. But in the end, it's revealed that the bad guy, also, side note. So I was saying that Luke and Han have literally nothing to do with this story. There's the cover with them. This should have been the cover, right? Oh, shit, I lost my page. Star Wars should not have been the cover. Oh, where'd it go? Yeah. This should have been the cover, and instead it's just on the back. This was the real cover right here. This is the story you're getting. This shit is comedic relief, and once again, completely superfluous. So it's revealed that Eneb, Eneb, is the one behind it all and all that stuff, and he's put Leia into this, you know, impossible situation, yada yada. They get out of it, heroes save the day. Just interesting. I like the idea behind it, though. It's like, why should you spare them? They would never even consider doing the same for you and all that other stuff. It's an interesting argument here. It's a hard argument to, not hard. It puts you into a position where you are really forced to confront your own thoughts, and it's something, to round it back to the election, that has been thrown out there, so don't act like it's not a real argument that people make. You'll hear, I've seen it on, people ranting about it on Twitter and talking about it on panel discussions of political activists and such. And it was related to extremists and how they should be dealt with, and how we treat people of Muslim faith here in America. And the thread I kept seeing is, let's see how much your liberal ideology, how tolerant they'd be of you if you go over there. Why should we extend to them that kind of courtesy? And the answer is itself. You're not them. Prove it. But the idea that someone would kill you for thinking the way you do, but you are not willing to kill them for thinking the way they do, when your life could be on the line and the lives of innocent people could be on the line. And in the case of this book, where a war for the fate of the galaxy is what's up, it's an interesting moral question. And I gotta be honest, this is the best volume of Aaron's Star Wars I've read so far. Again, the Luke and Han stuff, it's fun little comedic relief, but it is entirely superfluous and should be cut out. Side note, I think Luke kind of looks, I don't know, either like a doll or maybe like Asian. Definitely not like Mark Hamill. Not at all like Mark Hamill. Just saying. That stuff should be cut out. This is the Princess Leia story, though. This is so the Princess Leia story. I read Leia. Leia was not good. The solo miniseries she had, that sucked. Except for one cool speech. This is the Princess Leia story right here. So for anyone that read Leia and was disappointed, yeah, he does kind of look like a girl, doesn't he? Matthew Bennett says Luke Skywalker looks like a girl on that cover. It's funny. It's almost got like an anime style drawing to it. And it's weird because Han Solo doesn't look weird in comparison. It's so bad. Terry Dodson did the art for the cover. He took the time to sign it. I like his Millennium Falcon and everything. I just do not like the way Luke looks at all. Anyway, but yeah, if you were put off at all by the Princess Leia story, read this instead. This volume's really good for that. And like I said, my favorite volume of Jason Aaron's Star Wars so far. The first two were more just fun kind of craziness. This is legitimately good. This brings up an interesting moral question and puts some heart and some thought in Star Wars that makes it read better. The Kenobi backups are interesting. I just question the thought process behind waiting that long between stories, because it's all more or less one continuous story with Obi-Wan Kenobi being in exile on Tatooine. But it's still just a very you're spreading that stuff out so much. So I'm reading it in trade, and I can go back and reread each issue, yada yada. But I don't know. I question that. I just feel like that should just be a mini series on its own. Who knows? Maybe they will release the Obi-Wan journal stuff as its own volume whenever he finishes up an arc with that. Guess I'm kind of glad I'm not reading that in single. Joel Davis left an interesting comment in the live section, whatever. I don't know. I'm tired. I was up till 2 a.m. last night. I think the thought process is test the audience to see if they can handle an Obi-Wan spin-off film. I don't know if that's really the thought process, but it's an interesting idea to see if there's interest in an Obi-Wan spin-off film. That being said, if they've already told the story in comics by the time we get around to it, how long is this Marvel Comics continuity going to actually have effect on the films? Would they just adapt and expand upon what Jason Aaron's been doing with Obi-Wan? Or would they tell their own story that has nothing to do with what Jason Aaron's been doing but doesn't contradict it? Or would they tell their own story that's kind of similar to what Jason Aaron's been doing but contradict the hell out of it, so you cannot possibly have both of them? Slightly worried about that. So we'll see. Nero, what do you mean? He asked, but isn't that the case with some of the Marvel Cinematic? Marvel Cinematic, it's contradictory all over the place, but as far as I know, they haven't done much with their cinematic universe in comics. Joel says, my guess it would be its own story that doesn't contradict it. So I say it's Obi-Wan learning to be a Force ghost. See, it's funny because like the stuff Jason Aaron's writing would be more interesting in film, but the idea of Obi-Wan learning to be a Force ghost sounds like it's more interesting to read in comic book form. Maybe that's just me. Oh well. Anyway, the Star Wars Volume 3 Rebel Jail, I really, really did enjoy this. I'm really curious, like, how much longer are they going to keep going for in between episodes 4 and 5? this feels like a lot of stuff. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know, Nero. It's an interesting question. No, but like this seems like a lot of stuff is going on between episodes 4 and 5, and it's like, come on now. Could this Jason man fight an elk? Matthew Bennett asks. Fuck it, probably. Joel says, well, Trex has a ship introduced in the Aftermath book and or in the Tarkin book, and so they haven't contradicted much yet. I'm talking about between films and their new extended universe stuff. Stuff in the extended universe not contradicting itself is one thing. I'm talking about stuff happening in the comics and then films addressing that era or those characters in that same time period. I'm curious if they're going to be able to walk that line or not. Because I understood the idea of throwing out the old EU so that they're not weighed down by 20 years of people who probably didn't know what the fuck they were doing half the time. Not weighed down with storytelling options by that, but instead doing their own thing.
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.